And where are you from? Where are you
So
now?
I live in Arkansas, and I was born and raised in Arkansas, but I spent 21 years in Chicago. Yeah.
Interesting. Arkansas. I don't think I've ever, well, have I met anybody from Arkansas? I don't think I have.
It's very south.
Is it South? Would you consider yourself South, Southern?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Arkansas. I would consider y'all like West.
Well, we get included in Southwest, but we're on the east side of Texas.
Oh, okay. Where is the Mississippi compared to y'all?
So the Mississippi goes like north, catches the top, because we have the Arkansas River that goes through here, and the Arkansas River catches up to the Mississippi, and the Mississippi kind of goes beside us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got to get my geography lesson in. All right, so I'm going to turn the ticker off so we can get started. And we'll be official. All right, so welcome everyone to our first book club meeting in a long time. So I'm happy to be back, and this is an exciting interview with Dayna Abraham from Calm the Chaos Parenting. Calm the Chaos on Instagram.
I think it's Calm the Chaos Parenting on all socials now.
Awesome. You got it all put together now. Very
good. So at one point it was Lemon Lime Adventures. That was our blog when I first started out 10 years ago. And so to get the blog, you go to Lemon Lime Adventures, but everything else is Calm the Chaos Parenting.
Awesome. Well, so I'll talk to everyone about the book club because we have so many. I think we have like 500 new members in the last week. Yes.
It's amazing.
So these are interviews that we have in that awesome book club we have lots of different types of people come in. We have authors come in like Dayna. We have lots of advocates come in, and we're back to starting up our interviews. So I'm excited about that. And Dayna has a new book coming out called Calm the Chaos. And I don't have the book yet because it's not out yet officially, right?
Yeah, but they should have sent you the book. Okay, we're going to take care of that as soon as this is over. You should have the book. So it is Calm the Chaos, a fail-proof roadmap for parenting even the most challenging kids.
Nice.
Yes.
Well, Dayna, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, help us get to know you. Tell us about yourself. How did you start doing the work you're doing? All of the things. We want to know all of the things.
So I can start with how it started. So it started out as, I always kind of say I was born into this. So my older brother, we now know as bipolar, but I grew up kind of on the receiving end of his punches and his fits and fights, and kind of watching the challenges that my family went through, trying to understand him and trying to help him and support him. And so I had to learn at a really young age how to navigate that kind of environment and situation. And then I became a teacher, and my favorite kids were the ones that didn't quite like fit the mold, or had a paper trail behind them, or, in the teacher's lounge, the teachers would talk about, and I'm like, ooh, that kid sounds awesome. Let me have that one.
Those were my favorite as well.
Those are my favorites. And what I didn't realize either is growing up, I never fit. And I knew that. I realized that 100%. But I never realized that it was because I was neurodivergent and because of my ADHD brain. Like, I just nobody told me any of that. Growing up, there wasn't a lot of information, especially about girls.
And were you diagnosed with ADHD that early?
No, not until now,
right.
But now looking back, I'm like, oh, it makes so much sense, because I struggled with relationships. I struggled with organization. I was a super sensory seeker. So I touched a lot of things. I chewed a lot of things. And I was constantly, like, when my mom was upset with me, I looked down at the floor. I wouldn't look at her. I rubbed my pants when she was having conversations, and she was like, sit still. I'm like, I literally can't. And so I didn't understand any of that until I had my own son. Even as a teacher, I probably didn't understand a lot of that. And I was in the classroom for 12 years. had my own son, thought I'm going to be the world's best parent. I've got all this like background information. I know about child development. And then the universe gave me my child who was here to teach me all about life and all the things that I had wrong. And so, for the first 7 years, he was, for the first 3 years, it was like, okay, like he's really particular. He likes things a certain way.
And you get that. You're like that too.
I was like, okay, he was highly verbal. He was talking a ton. And so he was able to tell me what he wanted and needed. He was out of diapers by like less than a year. And I thought, man, I really am doing a pretty good job with this.
You're killing it.
Yeah. Except that like, I didn't realize he had sensory processing issues and he just hated being wet. And so as once he started kind of getting into school, started being around other people, it started becoming pretty evident that he just wasn't like all the other kids. And so he's kicked out of preschool. He was in trouble in kindergarten. He first and second grade, it started getting worse. And he eventually was kicked out of school more days than he was in school. And we're talking like all the educational trauma you can muster. Pretty much he's been through it. So I don't want to go into too much and be triggering, but it was awful. And he's kind of seen and endured all of it. And so I decided to take him out of school and try to figure out how to help him and try to figure out how to help him love himself and not blame the world for not understanding him. Those were kind of my two goals. And so I kind of muddled through life trying to figure that out with him and myself. And I started sharing the ups and the downs and the not so pretty days. And I never considered myself an expert. And then I started sharing what we were learning with others. And that's when it just started growing and growing. And at this point, I've now, created a framework and a roadmap. And my big thing is I wanted something that would be adaptable to as many people as possible. Something that wasn't like, do this, say this, go here, do that. Like I wanted it to be more, it's a framework, which is what I've come up with. I wanted a container, kind of like a filing system you could use and say, okay, these are the principles I need. And now how do I put this into place with my own kid and my own family and my own background? And so it took a lot of iterations, the last 10 years really, to whittle it down to what it is today, which is the book and a program. And now we help parents all around the world create better relationships with their kids, no matter what challenge they're facing.
I did see that you do workshops and you do coaching as well.
Yes.
And I was reading through the workshop page. I was, cyber stalking you just a bit. And I was reading through the page and all of the comments from your members or clients, they resonated so much with me. It was just like, we were going through this and I had to like really shift my own mindset and like, and let go of a lot of things. And it resonated with me so much because that's kind of like a similar journey that I've been on as well.
Yeah. And that's, part of what's unique about what we do is I do really focusing on yourself as a key proponent, but it's not all of it. It's a piece of the recipe per se. So, and then we need understanding. And I think any of us raising kids that don't fit that mold, we feel like we have to get a PhD in parenting to figure out our kid. And it shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be that difficult to understand our kids. And then the connection piece, we're fed a lot of like praise our kids and focus on the good and ignore the bad. And that we've got to accept our kids for who they are. And I already know that you believe that wholeheartedly. But a lot of parenting advice out there is not about accepting our kids wholeheartedly for who they are, how they show up to us, how they present themselves. Instead, it's about trying to kind of shave off the bits we don't like and molding them into something we do like. And so I knew that was something that had to shift. And then the final piece is that empowerment piece. And a lot of times in parenting advice, the empowerment piece is about you set the rules, you set the boundaries, you give the structure. And it's from the parent's perspective, and it never takes into account the child, their needs, their wants, their desires, their concerns. um, and what they need to thrive. And so our empowerment piece is extremely collaborative and very much so about creating an environment where everyone can thrive, not just the child, not just the adult, but everyone together.
And I really had a problem with the advice that we are given a lot is so binary of like
Mm-hmm.
good and bad and like all of these judgments on.
Yep.
That was always a kind of a problem for me. Like, yeah, is that a bad thing or is that just a thing?
Yeah.
Or, you know, is that something that we need to support? Because it's just so it's polarizing almost. We're like we're picking out good things and we're picking out bad things, and then we're, you know, trying to
And
fit
who's
this.
the judge of that good or bad, right?
Right.
It becomes very much of a guessing game of, well, they should know better. They should be able to do this. You know, and it's a funny story. It's like, I don't know if this is too sidetracked. My ADHD is real strong right now. So I'm just going to warn you. I'm definitely
here for all of that. Yes. I'm here
So
for all of it.
I had some dental work done 2 days ago, or no, yesterday. See, that's another reason why I'm kind of out of it. So I had dental work done yesterday,
yes.
and they have to numb me, and then I don't numb very easily. But the last dentist I went to, they gave me the shots, and then they went to go work, and I'm like, I can feel you. And they're like, that doesn't make sense. We've given you enough. You're good.
There's no possible way
you feel this, right? And yesterday, same thing happened. She did the top, she did the bottom. And I was like, I feel like I can still feel the top. Feels a little scratchy when you touch it. The bottom just feels like you're pulling on something. And so she goes, well, let me do the bottom first. She does the bottom. I don't feel a thing. I don't budge. I don't squirm. I don't eek or anything. I don't even like rip my nails out, right? Like during it. I'm not like, ah. So I'm actually able to relax into her doing the bottom. She goes to touch the top, and I come out of my chair. And for me, it was so validating to feel the difference between the bottom and the top. And for her to go, okay, you can still feel that. Something is different about the way your body is designed. And I thought, man, there's such a parallel here to how we treat kids and how we approach their behavior and their emotions, and especially their sensory input and their sensory sensations. Like, you're fine. You don't feel that. You should
be
be
annoyance. Yeah, like the annoyance factor. She wasn't like, oh gosh.
She wasn't annoyed. She believed me. And I could feel a very big difference between the two. And that was just so incredibly validating. And I just thought about how many times I've been told I shouldn't feel this as a human, not as like my teeth, but like, you shouldn't feel this. And I even said to her, I wonder if there's any research on highly sensitive or sensory processing or, neurodivergent people and where their nerves are in their body. Because they were talking about like, my nerves must be in a different place. And they were like, I don't know. I don't think that's ever been researched.
Right.
And I'm like, but that's fascinating.
And the effectiveness of different medications.
Yes.
We know that that's different. We know
Yes.
because we've taken them all, right?
Yeah.
So we know that even if you're just changing a brand, it's different. Like, it's
absolutely. Yeah, from name brand to generic, that can make a difference. My son had a medication at once that was coded and then one that was uncoded, and that made a big difference just between the coding, liquid versus pill. I mean, all of that makes a difference, but yet, so often we're given a tool, a strategy, it doesn't work, and it's like, well, something must be wrong with you.
Right. It should have worked.
Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
So talk to us more about your book. You have a framework. Obviously, you're not the type that's like, do this, and if it doesn't work, you did it wrong. Just try again. Tell us about the framework, and like, if I'm a parent who obviously this is Calm the Chaos, and I don't know if you've read our book, but I literally say in the book, like, our house was chaos. Our house was chaotic in the beginning. It was overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you go about helping these parents who are,
So the first piece is that it's like a 2-part system. The book is laid out, and the program, all of it. This is my full methodology. I don't hold anything back. And so this is the same methodology that's been used in our program and our coaching for the last 5 years. Same thing that we live and breathe by inside of our team and inside of our family. And so it's been lived and it's been tested across the world with all different situations and backgrounds and scenarios. And so the idea is that first you have a framework, which is these 4 pieces that I talked about. This, if you think of a Venn diagram with 3 concentric circles, you've got
those.
connection, understanding, empowerment, and then you, the one adult in the situation, as that grounded, safe presence, so that your kids know, all right, she's my safe place, he's my safe place. The connection is about affirming, and it's about accepting our kids for who they are, not for who we want them to be. The understanding is about looking under the surface at what's going on. And many of us have seen all those memes, you know, the ADHD meme, the autism meme, whatever. And it's like, here's what you see on the surface, and then here's all the things under the surface. But it feels like you're like throwing darts at the stuff under the surface to figure out what's going on. And so I
actually have an iceberg here from Dr. Moore's book, from Beyond Behaviors. Yeah.
Yes. So so that idea, right, is that there's stuff underneath the surface, but how do you go about figuring out which one it is, and in a way that doesn't add more stress or make you feel like you have to get a PhD in parenting or in your child. And then that empowerment piece we talked about really is that creating an out-of-the-box solution that works for everyone, being collaborative, problem solving, getting everyone on board. And so you have these 4 pieces. And had I just wrote the book as here's element number 1, element number 2, 3, and 4, you would get some progress. You would be able to do some of, apply it to your life. But where it really starts to be able to work is we were like you. We were going through 3 to 5 meltdowns a day. And those meltdowns were 5 hours a piece. So,
and honestly, like there's no guarantee that you're even going to be able to understand all of the time.
And there's no guarantee that you'll be able to take the information and then translate it into your own life, right? And so a lot of the books out there, like I just saw a new book coming out, and it's the 5 principles of blah, blah, blah. And it's like, principles are great, and they give us a guideline of what have we learned about children, about brains, about connection, about relationships, about neurodiversity? What have we learned that we can apply? And then it needs to not be in science terms, so everyone can apply it.
Right.
And then the biggest piece, though, is if I've got 3 to 5 meltdowns a day and they're lasting 3 to 5 hours, I have no room to access new information. And so that's where the roadmap was born. So the roadmap is, how do I apply this framework at each stage that I go through from surviving to thriving? And so at that survival mode stage, it's like the simplest, most easy to remember version of, we call it the UQ framework, of the framework, and you create a plan. And I call it the plan before you have a plan that works. So we all think about making plans for, what do I do if my kid runs, elopes? What do I do if my kid, has a meltdown? What do I do if my kid is overstimulated? Whatever those things are, those are great plans, but we need a plan until that plan works. And so that's what the Ride the Storm plan is. It really is about, how do I ride out the worst moments without losing my own sanity, without losing myself, without disconnecting from my kid?
How do I get my kid? Because let's be honest, I mean, we all have our own triggers. We all have our own sensory issues, and we want to make sure that we're not even just being good to them, but actually like not letting that kind of dysregulation back onto them to even make it worse.
100%. And so that first that first plan really is, if no one reads any further than that first plan, they will have changes in their life. And we see this in our program all the time. People will just implement the very first step. And the very first step is the U piece of that Ride the Storm plan, which I call stop, breathe, anchor. So when something happens, we stop, literally stop. So stop talking, stop moving, stop everything you're doing. And then take a deep breath. And yes, if your kid is eloping, you can still do this. You can just plant your feet, you can take a big deep breath and do this anchor. This takes 2 to 3 seconds. And then you can go after your kid. I promise you that 2 seconds will mean that you don't grab your kid, that you don't chase your kid so they run faster, that you don't say something, right? That you'll be in a calm place to be able to help your child. And so it's like stop, take a big deep breath in so you get oxygen to your brain. So your brain is like, oh, okay, we're safe here. And then it's having one anchor that reminds your brain, hey, friend, we are safe. You do not need to be triggered right now. And you're practicing that out of the moment. You're practicing when you go to the bathroom. You're practicing when you wash your hands. You're practicing right before you go to bed or when you brush your teeth, so that when the moment hits, it becomes instinctual.
It's almost like mindfulness.
Yes.
I don't know much about mindfulness. I don't do that, but it sounds kind of like
accessible mindfulness. Yes, because it's literally
I don't know anything about that, but from what I've heard,
it is. Yeah. So it is just accessible mindfulness, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of power if we can disengage our flight or fight response, then we can be more present for our kids. And it doesn't mean we don't still need some time away from them. It doesn't, whatever that is, but it just gives us a moment to kind of center ourselves, ground ourselves. And then the second part of that plan is something that I think is incredibly important for our kids that are autistic, are like really empathetic and they're noticers, and they pay attention to people's body language to communicate. And that's the connection piece. And so the connection piece in the Ride the Storm plan is just, we call it moments of safety. So you do a body scan from your head to your toes, and you just look for places that might be perceived as danger. So for my son, it was my groggy voice. If I was really tired or I woke up in the morning and I was using a groggy voice, that instantly triggered him because he assumed I was angry at him. And then for my eyes, if my eyes were kind of scrunched or furrowed, even if it was because I was stressed out about work, he would assume I was angry at him. And so you're just doing a body scan to say, what is my body telling the other person? And what could they maybe be reading as a signal of danger? Right. Because if they see my signals as dangerous, their fight or flight's going to go off and or get worse. And
so because you're no longer their safe space.
You are no longer their safe space. And you may be saying all the right things, but if your body doesn't have that energy to it, if your body doesn't have the look, the feel of safety, especially mom that likes to hug you when you're sad and hurt your foot, right? Like then they're going to go into a different spot as well.
That's interesting. That's an interesting thought. Because I mean, we talk a lot about, or I read a lot about, we talk a lot about co-regulation and things like that. But you're right about like kind of doing a internal audit of like maybe I'm saying the right things and even doing what they need, but it's not believable. Like you're not, they're not believing you because you're not in that. And you don't have your body language or your shoulders are up or
and that's really all you're focusing on really in the Ride the Storm plan. There's 2 other pieces, but the 2 huge ones are that, like the stop, breathe, anchor, and then moments of safety. And if you do those 2 things, your interactions with your kids will change. I have not seen a person who isn't able to change their interactions with their kids if they don't do those. And it's personal to you, right? I'm not telling you, think of this anchor or do this thing. It's just like, I am saying pause, but here's how to pause. And then I am saying, watch your body language. but I'm telling you how to watch your body language, and you get clear on your own, right? And you can do it right now. You can think of like, what do you say when your kid spills the coffee again? What do you like? What comes out of your mouth? What comes out of your mouth when they throw the remote and it breaks the TV for the third time, right? Like, what is happening in that moment? And the more you can practice that out of the moment, the thing that works for you, right? Finding your way. And then when it happens, you're going to be able to go, okay, this is not about me. They're not doing this to me, right? And then just kind of ride it out, not trying to fix, not trying to solve. Know that that comes way later.
Yeah, checking your own reactions.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yeah. So it's that idea in the book, you know, and I'll walk through, there's 4 steps for every plan or every stage. So, and there's 5 stages. That's 20 habits per se, or 20 steps that you can take to go from survival mode to creating a family that works together, empowers each other, and advocates for each other.
So I kind of like the idea of that, because you might be at like one step on this one and like down here on this one, and you can kind of gauge as you're moving forward, because obviously it won't be linear, right?
It is not linear at all. Yeah, it is not linear. And I think I say the phrase throughout the book so many times. I say, now here's how to do this. And if you don't get this reaction, it doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean your kid's broken. You're not failing. Here are some reasons why it might not be working. Here are some things you can try instead. And even then, it might mean that you just need to iterate, you need to test, right? And I think of it kind of like, especially when you're creating a plan, it's not throw it all out. It's
right.
What is this? Like you said earlier, it's not like good or bad. It's what about this do we like? What about this do we not like? What can we test and try again?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. So you gave us like the chaotic one. What is it? Riding the storm.
Yeah, ride the storm. Yeah.
What is like the other end of that?
So the other end of that is family success plan. And so the U piece of that is a mindset shift. Each of the mindset shifts get a little more difficult as you go, or a little more complex as you go, when you have more ability to access your logical thinking brain. And when you have more trust that you and your family are on the path to less chaos. And so the one at the end is what I call struggles to superpowers. And it's not about just finding, like, it's not like toxic positivity of like saying like, oh, my kid is like such a superhero or anything like that. I can give the example with myself, but I have an ADHD brain that comes with struggles and superpowers. And you take both of them. They're a flip side of the same coin. You can't get my like massively creative, quick start brain without also getting the high emotions and the low executive functioning and the struggle to plan and organize. Like they come hand in hand. And so if you want to like validate and love this piece about me, you also have to validate and accept this piece of me.
All of me.
And all of me. It all goes together. And so it's this concept that the thing that challenges us the most about our kid is really the flip side of the coin to their superpower. So if they're super rigid, right, in their thinking, and they like are do, this kid also is probably a super planner, and they can plan things out to a T if we really focus on that and realize, this is their planning coming out, instead of, they're so rigid. Right. Or,
yeah, I hear you on that.
You know, this is their special interest, right? Like my kid has a special interest, and they, like, my son loves robots or Lego. And so where can I help him use that, like, I need to figure it out mentality with other things in his life that are hard? I know that my son is incredibly passionate, and with that comes really, really big explosions when they happen. They're rare, but they happen still, right? He's 18 now, so they're much more rare than they were. It's the same kid that was having 3 to 5 a day. So, but it's that mindset shift, and that takes a little bit more work than just, all behaviors communication, or my kid is not doing this to me, or my kid needs me. It takes a little bit more thought work to
It's a
find.
lot of thought work. Yeah, that is a lot of thought work to
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a lot. And so there's stages that get you there. At stage 5, the connection is way more advanced. So connection at stage 5 for family success is building a connection plan as a family, is creating a family team name. So we're the Darbrahams instead of the Darbys or the Abrahams. We have people that are like Team Turtles, or whatever, like they come up with their own little team name and team flag and crest. And obviously if you've got a teenager that doesn't like this, you don't do that, right? Like,
right.
So, but it's finding a way that together we can say we are all in this together. We make decisions together. We are one team. So you're creating a connection plan as the family, not just individual of like me and this kid or that kid and that kid, but it's like, okay, what does our family connection look like? And how do we kind of make sure that these habits stay in place? So that's the connection piece, which is more advanced. You can't jump into that when
No, you cannot.
No. Like, if someone had told me to do that when my kids were like flailing and running off and getting kicked out, I would have been like, you are funny. Ha ha.
Right.
But we're told that so often, that we should play with our kids and have one-on-one time with them. And it just feels like more to do. And the understanding piece is kind of a culmination of everything I kind of share in all the other stages. But I call it unique profiles. And it sounds kind of scientific and boring, but the idea is that as a family, you each understand each other's way of being. So you understand each other's likes and dislikes, their sensory preferences, their triggers. We call them snap triggers and lava triggers. So the things that just make people snap, and then the things that build up. So for my son, flexibility, if he has to be flexible multiple times a day, eventually he's going to break. And having to change his mind, like, or things like that. Like if plans change, the first time he's fine, but like by the 5th time, you better watch it,
Right.
And so just knowing those about every single person and knowing their struggles and superpowers, you can now create an environment where everyone can thrive. And you can make decisions together based on what you understand about each other and not feel guilty or feel shame, because it doesn't look like what all the other families are doing.
That's a big piece too. And when I follow you, on Instagram a lot, and I know that's like bite-sized things, but I resonate with that. Like my house and our family does not look like any sitcom that I've ever seen, like in the 90s. Like none of that is going on in our house. And so that really giving parents that not permission, but like you can make this into like whatever works for you. And your living room does not even have to look like a living room.
No, it doesn't. Right. And we talk about something called huddles inside of the book, and that's like our collaborative way of having conversations. And those conversations can be speaking or non-speaking. They don't have to be with actual spoken word. But it is really hearing what the other person has to say, their concerns, understanding where they're coming from, and creating a plan that works together. And again, that's more advanced than just, I'm going to ride this out. And one of our community members, love her to death. She's autistic. She's raising 2 autistic kids. Her husband's autistic, right? She got to this part and her son said to her, it was when we were like going through the course, if you make me have a huddle, I will disown this family. It's so great. It's so great. She's like, well, what do I do with that? I was like, well, you don't call it a huddle, number one.
Right. Like number one, no more huddle.
We're not going to call it a huddle. And number 2, it doesn't have to be, it's not like sit down at the kitchen table and everybody bring their concerns. For us, huddles are a way that we just communicate in my family. And so they started making their huddles around video games.
Yes.
So they would play their video games, and while playing video games, they would start talking about things they were concerned about or things they needed to, problem solve or brainstorm together. And now her son comes to her and says, "Can we have a huddle?" Now, to him, that means we're going to play video games first, but they're then able to problem solve things.
In a
And
non-threatening
in
type
a
of manner. Yeah.
non-threatening way that works for their family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it really is about adapting to your family. And then the final piece in the family success plan is I call them value-based family systems. So this is as a family getting clear on what are our values, what's most important to us as a family, 3 to 5 of those. Most people say create your 3 to 5 rules. I think what are your 3 to 5 values that as a family you live by? Because then all decisions are easy after that.
So give me a for instance.
So, for instance, is we value accepting that everybody's different, right? And so, if we are trying to decide what should happen if with electronics time, right? And I have one kid that's like, but I really kind of need electronics to help me, settle or to calm down after
Yeah.
school or whatever that is. And then another one's like, well, that's not fair. You let him do it and I don't get to do it. And if our value is we accept that everyone is different and has different needs, then we're going to make sure that you get what you need for electronics and you get what you need. Right. So we're going to go about it differently instead of having a unilateral rule for the whole family. All electronics turn off at 3 p.m.
It's kind of like a family mission statement almost.
Mm-hmm.
Like finding those values, and then when situations arise, we go back to values and say, well, how does this fit in with our values?
Well, it's easy to then say, it's easy to go to someone and say, remember, in this family, we value making sure everyone feels heard. Mm-hmm. Right. And I know you're frustrated right now. So when you're calm, I'd love to hear what you are thinking, right? Because I want you to feel heard, but I also want your brother to feel heard.
Yeah.
And he was trying to tell you something and you walked off. Right. So it's just once you have that language, now it makes it easy. A common language makes it easier to create your systems. So the systems are, instead of firm rules or boundaries and that sort of thing, it's creating agreements. And it might just be, we agree, that everyone has their own body autonomy. Right. So we agree that that's something that's important. And so we'll do our best not to intrude on other people's autonomy. Now, if you've got a 3-year-old and they're touching you, you can't be like, you're breaking the rules. It's just, remember, we agreed that everyone has a right to say no. And I hear your sister saying, I don't want a hug.
Right.
Right. And so it just gives you a language that makes it so much easier to help your kids learn, help your kids develop skills, and then help them actually advocate for their own needs and be able to say, this is what I need. This is what I want. This is how I think we can solve this.
You're basically finding the language that you did not have as a kid.
Oh, 100%.
That's what it comes down to me. Like all of this stuff, like nobody ever talked about this stuff when I was a kid. I was like you, ADHD. I didn't have a word for that until later on. Luckily, my mom was just like a super empath or something, and so it was very supportive. So I never even really needed that language, but I definitely didn't have it. And this sounds like creating the language that maybe you wish you even had as a kid. And
I think for many of it is, and it's also just removing the shoulda, woulda, couldas from what society is telling us we have to do to raise, kids. Is that no, like we can be their coach, we can be their mentor, we can be their guide, but we don't have to be the one that assumes we know better than them. Right. Because, and I felt like that growing up. I did feel like my mom would be like, quit talking back to me. And I'm like, but I'm just trying to tell you my thoughts. Like, I just want you to hear me. And I think a lot of times that's where we get in a power struggle. And
that's part of like that whole thing of that whole just culture of, you think that you're supposed to be, as the parent, you're supposed to be in control, because I mean, that's how we grew up. like you're supposed to do this. So if your kid is telling you how they feel, it's almost as if they're breaking a rule, even if you don't feel that way. Oh, someone said if parents don't know what they want their daily routine to look like and what they want their boundaries to be, then it is difficult for them to communicate it to the children. I love how you said they can make it based on the values that they have for their family unit.
Yes, absolutely. And remember, we're talking about best case scenario. We're talking about the end of the roadmap. And so this isn't where we start. We don't. And so many people tell us to start with boundaries, start with the routine, start with the schedules. And look, I always tell people, don't cold turkey whatever you're doing, because then you're left with nothing, because you haven't quite learned a new way and you've just abandoned what you've been doing for X number of years. So pick one thing that you can start shifting into a new way of doing it, and start with that ride the storm plan. The second plan is a time and energy plan, which all of us need, right? Because if we don't have anything in our tank, we can't show up for our kids. The third one is a in the moment plan for diffusing the situation. And then the third one is being proactive and creating a ahead of the moment plan for what are we going to do if this happens? What are we going to do when this happens? So that we catch that downward spiral before it gets too far. And then we're at family success plan. So there's all that. And as you're doing that, you're developing a language, you're developing trust, you're developing safety, you're developing an understanding of each member of your family. So by the time you get to family success plan, you're like, ooh, this is what I like.
And we have the skills now. And
and this is what works for us. These schedules work for us. These routines work for us. These plans work for us. That's kind of where we're at as well.
Oh, let me see. Someone says, I think parents also need to know that babies are not just cute. Parenting is hard work and adjustments are made along the way. I do have and I talk about this a lot because my family, I have lots of kids. So my two older ones, I'm sure they're neurodivergent, but I don't know what flavor or anything. They were pretty easy as kids, but it was still hard, right? Like parenting is so hard. Like they were easy, but like it wasn't easy. And then
my middle one is very easy. My youngest is extremely easy, except for now she's developed. I wouldn't be surprised as she get older, she gets diagnosed autistic. She's got a lot of anxiety. So I don't know if that's what it is, but she's also got a lot of sensory preferences. And so it's like, I can wonder. But for the most part, I mean, she's super easy to deal with. And my middle son is just a joy for the most part, but I still have to deal with a 14-year-old who now has a girlfriend, or I have to deal with him not doing well on his grades, or him not wanting to clean up his room, and my daughter refusing to go to school. Like I still have to deal with some of that, and they're easy.
Right. Yeah. And it is so hard.
Quote unquote,
it is so hard. Right.
It's still hard. It's still hard. I was telling someone the other day, like, I hate the word expert because it makes me feel like I'm supposed to kind of have it all put together. I do believe now, deep down, that I'm a parenting expert in the fact that I have lived it, I've breathed it, I've come out on the other side, and I've walked it with so many other parents around the world. However, I am not perfect. Like I still screw up. Like I just got done with a 10-day trip with my son. We went around the world to Kenya, and halfway through we were staying in a hotel. The other 9 days we were in tents, right? So just me and him in a tent. He's 16 years old. And right? Like you're already like, oh my gosh, Dayna, right?
No.
So halfway through we're at a hotel and he's like being a little like snotty. I don't even like that word, but like that's how it felt. We had just come from a remote village in Africa where people had houses that were smaller than the hotel room we were staying in. Right. And yet he was like, I wish I had my own hotel room because you snore. And I took that as like so offensive. Like, oh my gosh, you don't care.
You were triggered.
You're not appreciative and all these things, right? So then it came time to like pack up to go to the second part of the trip because we had to pack into like a small duffel bag. And I'm like, hey, buddy, you forgot your jog pants. And it gets to like 50 at night. I'm like, you forgot your jog pants. This kid wears jog pants and a hoodie in 106 weather. And
Right.
he's like, I won't need it. And I'm like, but you wear your jog pants every day. He's like, I don't need it. And I'm like, but why aren't you packing your jog pants? And he was like, I don't want them. I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to pack them myself. And he was like, I'm going to take them out. And we got into this like tit for tat, like, I ended up being like, well, if you're going to act like this, I don't want to take you on trips anymore. And he's like, fine, don't take me on any trips anymore. And I was just like, this is going the wrong direction. This is not good. This is bad. We're going to stop, you know? But I'm human. I'm human. He's human. Parenting is hard. Raising human beings is hard. And yeah, so you're not alone if you still do that sort of thing.
Right. Absolutely.
It doesn't make you any less than as a parent or, you know, as a leader or a coach or a mentor. If you're helping other people, like, you still have knowledge to share.
So I have two last questions for you.
Okay.
Because I want to respect your time. But the first one, and this was not on the list that you sent, but no pressure or anything. I saw on your Instagram that you've been learning from autistic adults a lot.
I've been what?
Learning from the autistic community a lot. And I'd love to know who you're learning from.
So I like following anything you share on your page, just because I know you share a lot of autistic adults on your page. So I look for resources that I get from you. I have become really good friends with Heidi Maver, who wrote Your Child's Not Broken.
I like that book. I read that.
It's so good. It came out very similar time as yours too.
It's so fun. It's like, it's opposite of my book, kind of like it's entertaining and
it is. She's hilarious. If you've not, I'll introduce you if you don't know her very well. It's amazing. She is amazing. I really like, I don't know if she herself is, but I like following NeuroWild, that account. The stuff that she shares is really helpful. I also love learning from Christy Forbes. I just learned something new this week because I overstepped some boundaries. And so I'm learning like, okay, I need to be better about that. And I still have tons to learn. So I am open to whatever, whoever I need to be following or listening to.
Yeah, I love Christy as well, obviously.
And I also struggle with word retrieval in the moment if I didn't know the question ahead of time. So I hope I was able to name enough amazing people, but I'm trying to think. I can't.
No pressure in this. I was just curious. And I know you're like, I'm going to leave somebody out. I know I am. It's not even like that. I was just curious to see, like, who you're.
Those are the ones that I'm listening to right now. Neuroclassic, that page. I really like that page too.
And that has a huge variety of different.
Yeah. And so, and I follow a lot of autistic-led pages, but their names are not. And so my feed is full of it so that I'm constantly just like, okay. And
it seems like Heidi's book is kind of similar to your family dynamics as well, just kind of listening to you. So and reading the book. It's kind of, that's awesome.
She's amazing. I love her.
Okay, last question.
Okay.
No pressure again.
Uh-oh.
If you could give just one piece of advice to the parent of a newly diagnosed autistic child, brand new, one piece of advice, what would you tell them?
So I think it would be, it's kind of a conglomerate. I'm going to cheat a little bit here. But I would say number one is that you are exactly the parent your child needs, because there's a lot of fear, a lot of worry that maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I don't know how to do this. Maybe I'm not sure where to go next. And I would just say that you're exactly who your child needs. That's number one. and that your child's not broken, that there's not something to fear or something to, it's not doom and gloom. Like, this is, yay, you've learned something more about your child. And now there are so many paths to find resources and to find supports and to find ways to collaborate with your child, so that they can love themselves. And yeah, that's what I would say. So it's kind of like, you're not failing, and your kid's not broken.
You are enough, and your kid is enough. Like, yes, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And Calm the Chaos, your book, comes out
August 15th.
Officially.
Yeah.
August 15th. That's like 2 weeks from
13
today.
days.
Yeah, like that's in 2 weeks. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that.
I am too. Thank you. Yes. And people can go to calmthechaosbook.com, and we have lots of pre-order goodies. And then next week, if you've already pre-ordered, I know you're in our expert series, right?
Yes. It's funny how you don't like to be called an expert, yet here you are asking me to be called an expert.
I know.
And I said, I'm not an expert.
You are too. I loved your book. So, yeah, I am super excited about that. We've got over 21 experts who have been in the trenches, worked with families. We've got everyone from, people who focus on mindful parenting to people who work specifically with, autistic families. I mean, it's a whole, conglomerate of people. I'm super excited. Heidi's one of the experts on there. You're one of the experts. And I've listened to every video so far, and they are amazing. Like, you're going to get head and heart. My husband says, like, it's a good mix of head and heart. There's tips of things you can do today. And then there's also just like a knowing, things you need to hear from people. And when you hear it from so many experts time and time again, you're going to hear a theme in the videos. And
this is all for people who go to Calm the Chaos.
Yep. Go to calmthechaosbook.com, pre-order the book, and you will get free access for lifetime access to all 21 videos.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So we'll put the link up in the chat.
Okay.
Done. And I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you want to tell us? Anything else?
No, I mean, I think I'm just really appreciative that you had me, and this has been a really fun conversation. And if anyone has any questions or thoughts, I'm an open book, so reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. You hang on, and I'm going to end the broadcast. Okay. Thanks, people, for watching, and we will come on again.
Awesome.